Overthinking again, aren't you? He texted in a tone that dripped with dismissive amusement, a response I'd grown all too familiar with over the past few weeks. I stared at my phone, my mind churning with a mixture of frustration and hurt. My name is Casey Monroe, and for as long as I can remember, I've been told that my cautious nature, my tendency to analyze every little detail, is nothing but overthinking. But what I didn't expect was for those very words to come back to haunt me in a way that would not only expose his duplicity, but also empower me to reclaim my self-worth. It started one rainy evening when our small group chat, a mosaic of messages from a tight-knit circle of friends I'd known since college, went quiet. Usually, the chat buzzed with witty banter, plans for weekend outings, and endless streams of memes. That night, as I waited for responses to a message I had sent pondering our upcoming reunion, one name in particular kept popping up in my notifications: Ryan. Ryan, known for his brusque honesty and unapologetic straightforwardness, had always been a bit of a wild card in our group. But that evening, his message was different. It wasn't a casual LOL or a cheeky meme. Instead, he wrote, "Casey, you're overthinking this whole reunion planning. Just chill, it's not that big a deal." His words stung, not so much because I hadn't heard them before, they were as common as the buzzing of my phone, but because of the timing and the mounting tension in my mind that had been building over the last few weeks. You see, lately I had been catching subtle hints in Ryan's messages that didn't quite match up with his usual persona. Over the past couple of months, I'd been feeling uneasy about something in our group's dynamics. There was an undercurrent of secrets that I couldn't quite place, a series of vague references about plans being made without my knowledge, hints dropped in the middle of group jokes, and his repeated insistence that I was just overanalyzing things. At first, I chalked it up to my own natural caution. After all, I had a habit of dissecting every conversation, every emoji, every pause in the chat. But then, slowly, my instincts told me that something wasn't right. Late one night, alone with my thoughts in my small, lamplit room, I decided to revisit our group chat history. I scrolled through messages carefully, each one now charged with the possibility of revealing hidden truths. And there it was, buried among the barrage of mundane banter, a string of messages that, when pieced together, painted a very different picture from what Ryan had led me to believe. In one conversation, I found that Ryan had sent a private message to another friend, hinting that my overthinking was causing me to miss out on important plans. In another thread, an offhand comment suggested that the rest of the group had been deliberately excluding me from certain discussions, using the excuse that I was too much into the details and always overcomplicating simple things. The more I dug, the more the evidence piled up. What started as a casual remark became an avalanche of proof, a digital trail that wasn't accidental, but deliberate. Ryan had been undermining my confidence, dismissing my genuine concerns as nothing but overthinking. Every time I'd raised an issue about the upcoming reunion or questioned a vague plan, he'd shot back with, "Stop overthinking and just go with the flow." And now, there were screenshots, private messages, and even voice notes in which he voiced his disdain for what he saw as my constant analysis of every little detail. I felt a familiar mix of anger and hurt surge within me, a fire that burned all the more fiercely because it wasn't just about being told I was overthinking. It was about being trivialized, diminished, and left to question my own intuition. Determined to face the truth head-on, I decided that I wasn't going to let his dismissal go unchallenged. I gathered every piece of evidence I had painstakingly compiled on my phone, screenshots of chat logs, timestamps of suspicious messages, and even a saved voice note where he snarked, "Casey, don't ruin a good time by overthinking every little thing." The next morning, with the cool light of dawn creeping through my window, I gathered my courage. I crafted a message that was both calm and assertive, a message meant not to attack for the sake of revenge, but to reclaim my own narrative and force a conversation about respect and honesty. I posted in the group chat, "Hey everyone, I've been reflecting on some of our recent conversations, and I want to share something important. I'm someone who values transparency, and I believe that if concerns exist, they should be discussed openly rather than dismissed as overthinking. I've noticed some comments recently that undermine my ability to contribute, and I'd appreciate if we could talk about this like friends." The reaction was immediate. Messages popped up as some friends apologized, others expressed surprise, and a few even admitted that, in hindsight, they'd noticed a subtle pattern of exclusion. Ryan was quiet for a long while, an ominous gap in the digital conversation that spoke volumes. Finally, one of our mutual friends, Jenny, wrote, "Casey, I never meant to make you feel this way. We all value you here. Let's all have a real conversation about this." The tone in the chat slowly shifted from dismissive to thoughtful, and I sensed that my willingness to speak up was resonating with the group. Later that day, I reached out privately to Ryan, asking if we could talk one-on-one. "I want to understand your perspective, but I also need you to hear mine," I wrote. To my surprise, he agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, neither of us under too much pressure, just two people who had once been close friends now caught in the crossfire of miscommunication. Over coffee, the conversation started hesitantly. "Casey, I didn't realize that my comments were affecting you so much," Ryan said, his tone less combative and more reflective. I listened as I explained. "When you say I'm overthinking, it feels like you're dismissing my feelings and concerns outright. I'm not trying to ruin the fun. I'm simply trying to understand what's going on, to feel included in decisions that affect all of us." His eyes flickered with a hint of regret as he responded. "Maybe I did come off harsher than I intended. I guess I thought you were making a big deal out of nothing, and I didn't consider how it might make you feel." It wasn't a full apology, not yet, but it was a beginning, a crack in the wall of indifference that had grown between us. Over the next few weeks, our one-on-one conversations became more frequent. Slowly, I started to understand that Ryan's use of overthinking was, in part, a defense mechanism. He admitted that he sometimes felt overwhelmed by emotional discussions and wasn't used to dealing with the intensity of feelings that I expressed so openly. "I'm sorry, Casey," he said one evening. "I didn't mean to belittle your concerns. I know that's a part of who you are, and I should have respected that." His words, though simple, marked the beginning of a rebuilding of our friendship, a rebuilding founded on a more honest dialogue about our differences. Through that process, I also learned a valuable lesson about self-worth. I started to realize that being sensitive wasn't a flaw to be hidden but a strength, a quality that allowed me to empathize deeply, to see the nuances that others might miss, and to create art, stories, and memories that resonate with authenticity. I began to channel my emotions into creative projects, a series of digital art pieces, a collection of short stories inspired by the ups and downs of friendship and trust, and even a small podcast where I discussed the challenges of navigating relationships in a world that often dismisses genuine feelings as overanalysis. The podcast, which I titled Deep Thoughts, quickly became a space for people who felt they were misunderstood. I featured conversations with other sensitive souls, experts on emotional intelligence, and even interviews with friends who had learned to balance logic and feeling. Every episode was a dialogue, a conversation that didn't shy away from the vulnerability of being human, but celebrated it instead. Listeners wrote in saying, "Your podcast helped me embrace my sensitivity, and I used to think being emotional was a burden, but now I see it's my superpower." One particularly memorable episode featured a roundtable discussion among a group of close friends. We talked about how society often dismisses deep thinking as overthinking, a term thrown around casually to stifle genuine conversation. As I recounted the experience with Ryan and the pivotal moment when I showed the group chat all his dismissive messages, one friend remarked, "That's when I realized, sometimes the very thing they accuse you of is what makes you extraordinary." Her comment resonated with everyone, and we ended the conversation with a collective promise to value our differences rather than diminishing them. As I continued to grow in confidence and creativity, I eventually published an article about my journey, titled simply "The Truth Behind Overthinking." It was raw, unfiltered, and told the story of how dismissive words can ignite a fire of self-discovery and empowerment. The article was shared widely on social media, and soon I found myself invited to speak at events about the power of vulnerability and the importance of emotional honesty. The irony wasn't lost on me. Someone who once used overthinking as an excuse to cut me down had unwittingly fueled a movement that celebrated exactly what he had dismissed. Looking back, I see that moment, the time when I showed the group chat everything he said, as the turning point in my life. It wasn't just about proving him wrong. It was about reclaiming the part of me that had been undervalued for far too long. I learned that every dismissive comment, every moment of being told to just chill or stop overthinking, was an opportunity to dig deeper, to understand myself better, and to forge my own path free of judgment. Now, as I sit in my bright, humble home office surrounded by sketches, notes, and the soft glow of my computer screen, I reflect on how far I've come. My relationship with Ryan has evolved into one based on mutual understanding and respect. Two people learning to navigate their differences through honest conversation. I've built a community of friends and followers who celebrate our sensitivity, who know that every thoughtful, probing question is a mark of a truly engaged heart. So, if you've ever been accused of overthinking, if you've ever felt that your depth of thought was a burden rather than a blessing, remember this: your ability to feel deeply, to question, and to search for truth is a superpower. Let every dismissive comment be a reminder of your strength. Document your journey, share your truth, and know that the very things that make you sensitive are the same qualities that set you apart in a world that often favors the shallow. This is my story, a journey from feeling belittled by dismissive words to celebrating the raw, authentic power of being unapologetically myself. I was once told to stay in the background, to quiet my thoughts and let others lead. But I chose to show the world that my depth, my overthinking, and my curiosity were the very things that would guide me to a future of creativity, connection, and undeniable success. Embrace every thought, every emotion, every moment of introspection. Because in the end, it's those very moments that build the foundation of who you truly are, and that foundation is unshakable, no matter what anyone else says.